Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Sports Frenzy podcast. Phil Penarski here once again, and so happy to be joined with our sports correspondents, Dean Holzwarth and Andy McDonald. Guys, it's been a long time since we've all been in the same room talking about all of the sports here in Michigan, and we've got quite the show to get everybody caught up on. Of course, we're going to talk about the big news out of Ann Arbor. A new head coach for the football team has been announced in Kyle Whittingham. Of course, got to spend a little bit of time talking about the Lions and a pretty disastrous end to that season with them not making the playoffs. But let's start pretty positive. You know, again, it's been a minute since we last were able to all talk. So, again, I think it's pretty appropriate we start talking about the hottest team. Again, we've talked about this team so many times already this year, that being the Grand Rapids Griffins. Every time we talk about them, it's like, oh my gosh, they keep winning. They're doing so well. How long can this keep going? It can't last forever. And it just seems to keep happening. I mean, through 30 games right now, or 31 games, I should say, they are 28, 1-1-1. They have only lost once in regulation, and they have not lost a regulation game, I believe, in 18 games. I believe that's the stat I saw. The last insane. 18 games, they are 17-0-1-0. Just saying these numbers out loud is insane. And again, like I said, every time we talk about the Griffins, it's always, oh my gosh, how crazy is this? This is getting crazier and crazier now.
Yeah, you just kind of wonder, like, when's it going to end, right? Are they going to have a losing streak?
You don't want it to end, right?
No, 100%. You know, obviously the best start in, the 90-year history of the AHL, which is pretty, amazing to think about, right? That no other team is doing right now what the Griffins or have done what the Griffins are doing right now. So, I know Andy's been to a few games work-wise and social-wise. I've been the same, and it's just amazing what these guys are doing out there. Look at the month of December. Obviously, they had 21 points. It's reached the 50-point mark faster than any other team in history. So, a lot of these records that they're breaking, they just continue to break with, every 5 games, every 10 games, and you just don't, you don't know when it's going to stop.
Yeah, it's impressive. I covered New Year's Eve. That was an incredible crowd like it always is, but what was even more impressive was the Friday after that. Place was like sold out, and they had this game where they were down 2-1, and they scored towards the end of it, and then went to a shootout. There's a bunch of crazy calls at the end of that game. Dom Shina actually got pushed into the net, and he got up and punched this guy, and the whole place was going crazy. And obviously, he's the captain. He scored the game winner. It just seems like everything is like just nothing can go wrong for them right now at all. Again, I mean, talked about like if they get too hot, it's really the year would be a problem going towards the playoffs. I guess that's to be seen, but it's just incredible because it doesn't matter who's playing for them right now, and they haven't had to make a lot of switches to their roster, which is probably what's helping them a lot. Obviously, John Leonard did just get called back up to the Detroit Red Wings, and Nate Danielson just got sent down to the Griffins. So, I mean, you're not really losing anything there. I feel like you're just kind of replacing a good player with another good player. It's just been so impressive to watch. And honestly, in all my years of living here and going to those games quite a bit, I've never seen the van like it's been the past like few times. Like people are into that, like they're watching the Red Wings right now. It's crazy. Like I was interested just to kind of see before doing this podcast today about like the seats for Wednesday night's games, and those games tend to usually not be as busy. You can't get many seats in the lower bowl right now. It's crazy. Like everybody's following it like they're a professional, like an NHL team. It's insane. So it's been a lot of fun to watch, and we're very lucky to have them this close right now.
Look at all the free tickets they're giving out with winning Wednesdays.
Yeah, no, for sure, man.
Every Wednesday's been a win.
Yeah, definitely.
They've only had a few so far. They don't count the New Year's Eve one as one, so that's so it goes back to the Wednesday before that. But either way, I mean, people are just buying it, man. It's insane. Like I couldn't believe how many people stayed and watched that. Like usually Griffins games on Friday nights, people go out and have the social aspect afterwards and leave maybe after like the second period. Not a chance. Everybody was in their seat till the end of that game. It was awesome.
Well, and it's again, I've been to a fair share of Griffins games, and even when the team isn't maybe as good as they are right now, those are still fun environments. And now you're providing them a team to really get behind and really root for and kind of just keep winning. I mean, why not head on out to Van Andel, even on a Wednesday? I mean, plenty of reasons to go check it out. And again, we touched on the fact that 28 1-1-1 so far this season. They have a plus 54 goal differential so far this season, and they have a 22-point lead over the next team in their division. Any part of that, or maybe there's another aspect to this team that has surprised you the most or really kind of brought you the most joy during the season so far?
Well, we've talked about their defense a little bit with like Gustafson and Hall being down here the entire season, 2 guys that were signed to the Red Wings last year to make a difference. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out for them at the NHL level, but it's been great for them at the AHL level because they've been dominating this league. And then Sebastian Cossa had he would tell you definitely he had a tough end of the year last year, just wasn't his best. He's won back-to-back goalies of the month, and that's like the first time ever in the franchise's history that a goalie has won that honor twice in the same season, and he did it in back-to-back months. So if you really want the biggest difference of all of it, is that they actually have defense this year, and Costa's back on. I mean, that game I was talking about that they won on Friday night a couple weeks ago, he made 47 of 49 saves. I mean, he's on it, and they were good chances too in that game. It wasn't like they were just slap shots from the point. Like they were, the Griffins got dominant. I think they got outshot like 45-24 in that game, and they still found a way to win because they can lean on him to do the job too. So to me, it starts with them on their defense being significantly better than it was last year, especially when they were losing all those games. And then Costa's back to being the player that he was. Who knows how long he'll be here? It probably depends on how the goaltending, continues. Because right now, John Gibson's been playing very well in Detroit, and Cam Talbot's been more than a suitable backup. So it'll be interesting to see how long they keep him down here and what they do with that. But I don't think anybody in Grand Rapids is going to complain about it. That's for sure.
Yeah, my question to you guys is all this Griffin success a product of the Wings' success? Like, is it something where, hey, the Wings are playing well, so they're not moving as many guys as they used to try to find certain guys to fit in at the NHL, or try different guys with the Wings? Do we think it's a product of that a little bit?
I 100% think that. Like I just was kind of saying, I think that if their goaltending was as bad as it was to start the year and John Gibson didn't get as hot as he was, I don't think they would have cut John Gibson, but I think they would have maybe tried to pull Costa up right now just to change things up. Again, the Red Wings are I think they're the second longest team in the NHL without making the playoffs at 9 years without making it. Yeah. So they're obviously hungry up there to get to the playoffs, and they probably would make the moves they need to, and they've done that in years past. The other part is there hasn't been any injuries really at the level. I mean, like Patrick Kane's been out a little bit, and they've had a couple, and that gave John Leonard the chance to go up there and be good, and he showed what he can do at the NHL level. So unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, depends on how you want to look at it, but he'll be up there playing at the NHL level. But there just hasn't been many reasons to take away from the Griffins roster right now. So that's what's helping him so much. If they can maintain like relatively good health, I mean, I think that's been the answer all these years. Even like the Marches that we've gotten so frustrated with the Red Wings blowing it, a lot of injuries in those seasons. So that's a big part of it. They can stay healthy all the way through the year. They're obviously going to be really, really good at this level because we already know what they are.
Yeah. One last thing: has the Griffins locked in a secured a playoff spot already?
I'm not sure about that.
Right.
I actually haven't looked at it, but I mean,
you gotta be thinking.
I remember about probably 7 to 8 games ago, the last time I really looked at the standings. It was incredible to me that they were only up like 14 points on second place. I was like, with that, their division's actually pretty good. So they probably haven't technically wrapped it up yet, but I mean, they're not going to miss the playoffs.
Right. I was going to say,
zero shot.
If you're in their division right now, you're probably a little upset, even if you're probably having a good season so far, because they're having an otherworldly season. And I don't want to, jinx anything, but I am kind of getting Whitecaps vibes. Not
even the 2025 Tigers could blow this. There's absolutely no way they get it.
Everyone else is playing for second place.
Right. Yeah. But again, I am kind of getting. There's something about West Michigan minor league teams. These couple of seasons now. We had the Whitecaps in their incredible year. Now we've got the Griffins. Again, maybe it's the Gold's turn next after kind of what we've been seeing with them too. But again, back to the Griffins. We also mentioned quite a bit when we do mention this team. The work that Dan Watson has been doing. I mean, again, just can't give enough credit, honestly, to what he's been able to do, and really just kind of make Grand Rapids what they are. And again, just a top team in the AHL right now, and really a top team in all of hockey. I mean, you can't be a fan of hockey and not be aware of what the Griffins are doing right now.
Yeah, and there's so many games, right? You would think that they'd have a little bit of a setback at some point, and obviously games are running, 2-3 games a week, and you see this in the NBA, but not probably as much. The Whitecaps obviously had a great success, but you're playing every single day there. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's just something we've never seen before, and the consistency and Dan Watson has the guys buying in to what they're doing, and it looks like they all get along. And I think we talked about a lot with team chemistry and just building, and they're just stacking wins and stacking wins.
Yeah, Dan Watson deserves all the credit in the world for what they've been able to do, for sure. Yeah. Brian Lashoff, some of the other guys in that staff as well. But I do, I already mentioned him a little bit ago, especially that game the other night. Dom Shine deserves a lot of credit too, because he's been here for a long time, and he finally got the upgrade to being the captain on this team. And I think he's done a phenomenal job, because the vibes in that locker room have to be so good right now. Yeah. And he's been able to keep it going that way since he's been the captain of this team. So I love that he's the guy in charge there, and I think if you're a Griffins fan, you should too.
Absolutely. Well, again, big good luck goes out to the Griffins throughout the rest of the season. We're going to be, of course, keeping everybody a little bit more aware of what they're doing week in and week out now that the NFL season is over. We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. But first, let's go over to Ann Arbor now, where the Michigan Wolverines football team now has a new head coach. Kyle Whittingham, the former Utah Utes head coach, has now been officially hired as the next head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. Christmas came a little bit late for Wolverines fans as the announcement came on December 26th. Kyle Whittingham, I mean, he spent 20 years in Utah building that program up, kind of taking over just what Urban Meyer was able to do in his years there as well. He was 177 and 88 during those 20 years with Utah. Guys, initial reactions to that hiring, it was something that we've been kind of keeping an eye on and wondering who would Michigan be going after once the Sharon Moore situation kind of subsided and the smoke cleared a little bit more. There was questions about who they would go after. They decided to go with Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah, I think it's a great hire with all things considered of what's going on. I don't think if you're a Michigan fan, you could have asked for much better than what they just got. And Kyle Whittingham was interviewed a couple times, and he said that when he didn't want to overstay his welcome in Utah. So that's kind of why he didn't want to be one of those coaches that they're basically kind of like, you got to leave. He decided to get out like when things were good. He ended on a pretty good season. He's like, okay, we're good there. And he said there was a handful of places he wanted to go, and Michigan was one of them. So that's it's a good job by Michigan to go out and get him as the coach. But I think it's also the right move to get away from everything that was kind of going wrong and getting away from that tree that they had, where just it seemed like no matter what coach was around or in charge, they were a problem. So I think it's overall good for a fresh start, and I think this is the kind of guy that brings in a culture where they're gonna. If you're at Michigan, you want like that hard nosed, tough, like wins at the line of scrimmage kind of football. That's what he's done out in that conference for that long out there. It's kind of what he's brought a different style than most of the teams play out there, and I think it should correlate very well with Michigan. He's also been able to get Bryce Underwood to come back so far, right. and I think everybody's kind of waiting on the decision of some of the other skill players and stuff to see if they come back, because what you really want to see is that chemistry being able to be built under a coach that actually knows what he's doing, I think. So right now, I think it's more about just what they'll get back on the roster for how good they can be next year, but I think for right now, Michigan did the right thing with who they hired.
Yeah, I think definitely is going to be a great fit. He's 66 years old, but he still has tons of energy. Obviously, still wants to help, reestablish this program as, a successful one. Obviously he's bringing over his offensive coordinator, which I think is a good sign. And then he's got BYU's defensive coordinator, source to say, coming, right? Is that confirmed?
Yep.
And obviously, they had this, second most rushing yards or, per game in the country. BYU's defense was really good this year. So, yeah, I think he's putting together a collection of a very good staff to help this team and help this program. And maybe he is, maybe not necessarily a gap stop, but maybe he's going to be there for 4 or 5 years, before he still starts getting up there in age a little bit and then bring somebody else in. But I think for the time being, a fresh start was exactly what Michigan needed after everything that went down with Sharon. And I think that's the last time we were together is when we were talking about Sharon.
Right.
It was, yeah.
But no, I think Witt's going to be a great fit for that program, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Yeah, no, I love him coming into Michigan and then also just immediately working on that coaching staff and bringing in guys, some that he had familiarity with at Utah, and then also, again, BYU as well, who had a really great season as well. So I think he's building up that coaching staff, and again, that Bryce Underwood announcement saying that he would be back in Ann Arbor, definitely a good thing, I think, if you're looking for some consistency and, maybe bringing some guys back from last year. Maybe they've built up that sort of a bond a little bit, and now seeing their quarterback kind of say, hey, I'm sticking around, maybe you guys should too. That could go a long way. How good is it, though, to have Bryce Underwood? He did struggle a little bit his freshman year. We saw that kind of exemplified a little bit in the bowl game against Texas in that fourth quarter. Finishes with 2,200 passing yards, almost 400 rushing yards, 15 total touchdowns, but 11 interceptions. What do you expect from Bryce Underwood in year two?
I mean, obviously, the scheme is going to be a little bit different. I think you're going to see him run the ball more. I think you're going to use Bryce Underwood's legs. You're going to play to his strengths, right? And even though Witt is a guy who wants to run the ball a lot, I think Bryce is going to be a main part of that. Obviously, I saw the Forest Hills Eastern kid just transferred, which I was a little surprised about yesterday. Went into the transfer portal. So, yeah, I just think that Bryce is going to have another year to develop kind of under a new coach and a new coaching staff, and I think it's only going to benefit him because I don't think the past one really did him any wonders or any favors as far as helping him improve to the level that he needs to improve. So a fresh start for Michigan and Bryce Underwood, and I just see him kind of elevating his game next year. And despite a tough schedule that Michigan's going to have, I just see that as a positive for Bryce.
No, I think if you watch that like Texas game in the bowl game, especially in the first half, I think that was some of the best football that he had played all year. Obviously, the second half he made a couple of really key mistakes, some of the interceptions, and that last drive he just kept throwing the ball away when he needed to score. So there's just like those are things for me. Like the raw talent is 100% there with Bryce Underwood. I don't think there's a question about that. I think you can see it if you watch any game that he's played in. Like there's flashes where it's like, wow, this kid can really be this good all the time. But he just wasn't coached. I mean, I don't think Sharon Moore is the kind of guy that can do that. And Jason Beck, the new person they're bringing in to be the offensive coordinator, he's the kind of guy that like he has a resume where he's developed quarterbacks in the past. Like I'm forgetting his name right now, but he was there for what 6-7 years. The quarterback they had at Utah, I can't remember his name.
Cam Rising.
Yes, yeah, he was there forever.
yeah.
But obviously he has a pretty good arm on him and stuff.
name.
So I think when you look at Bryce, some of the like videos you'll see out there on Twitter and stuff, when you search like his mechanics, they do look really bad. They just don't look like they were ever really worked on in the offseason. I think that's a big problem. Obviously, he did run a lot more in that Texas game, and that was good to see too. But yeah, I think it really comes down to if Beck can work well with him. I think that's going to be the key. And retaining some of those receivers back, I think, is also a big thing. Like Andrew Marsh, they started to really get some correlation towards the end of the year. I think you want to see him come back and everything else. But at the end of the day, I like how Whittingham decided to bring his own staff in right away. And I'm sure when he got hired for this job, he said, I'm bringing my guys in. Like, I'm going to do this my way if I take this job. And that's the right way they should be doing it. Let him handle it. He's had a lot of experience. And I think this is the right offensive coordinator to make him a better quarterback next year.
Definitely. Well, again, I mean, the season for Michigan is only about a week old at this point right now, but let's kind of jump ahead to next year a little bit and kind of focus in a little bit and maybe try and work our Nostradamus magic as best we can. What can we expect in year one with Kyle Whittingham, and maybe what should we be expecting from this team? We've seen, obviously, the need to kind of build, a couple of years maybe, but we've also seen guys like Kurt Cignetti jump in year one and take his team, Indiana all the way to the college football playoff. So what should we really expect from Whittingham and the Michigan Wolverines in 2026?
I mean, I think you can expect with as much as they bring back, or as much. I mean, the transfer portal is such a weird thing. Like they could also get some other players that are really good too. So kind of have to see what the roster makeup is before I would say or call a record out or whatever. But I do think you'll expect to see a more disciplined team than what we saw last year. I think Michigan kind of just. Like a lot of those games, they were clearly more talented than some of the teams they played because they had a pretty weak schedule overall, except for the games they played against good teams, and then they just didn't really compete. So it's more or less about just coaching them up and getting them to know plays and not to call timeouts at dumb spots and just things like that kind of over and over again that seemed to hurt Michigan throughout the whole year. Like they would protect the ball most games, then when it mattered most, they get like a game against Northwestern, they had like 5 turnovers and barely won on a walk-off field goal. It's just things like that shouldn't have to happen. I think it's more you'll see Michigan taking care of business against teams they're supposed to and not having as many problems with all these close finishes that they had to have against teams they clearly have more talent than.
Yeah, you didn't necessarily see a lot of blowouts last year, did you?
No, none.
Typically, Michigan kind of beats up on some of those.
CMU, that was it.
Yeah, that was the only one that we really saw.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see more balance. I think just more balance out of the offense. Obviously, maybe, like Andy said, less mistakes, being able to dominate teams more, like you said. But, yeah, I think the expectation next year would be, obviously, like I said, the schedule is going to be tougher because of the places you have to go to and the teams you're going to play. But I think expectation would be, you've had so much success. He's had so much success at Utah. I do think the expectation would be to make the college playoff, right? Like that has to be the expectation for Michigan right now, every single year moving forward.
I mean, it's top 12 now, so it's different too.
Right.
It is different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so making the playoff, I think, is the first step, and obviously being able to beat Ohio State, coming off this year's loss would be obviously huge, obviously. But yeah, just being able to take the necessary steps to get in the college playoff and compete for another national championship.
All right, well, time will tell on the Michigan Wolverines. It now comes to the part of the show that I personally have not been very excited to talk about, and that is the Detroit Lions. The end of their season came to an end on Sunday after they beat the Chicago Bears, but it was a little too late as they dropped I believe the 3 previous games and were already out of the playoffs going into that final game. Not only is it kind of upsetting to see them not make the playoffs, it's also kind of surprising. I don't think any of us picked them to finish last in the NFC North, and somehow they did. I mean, just again, did not really want to start talking about this,
Yeah.
but it's the biggest story that we can really talk about right now.
I mean, our predictions. Phil, you and I picked the Lions.
Yeah.
Andy picked Minnesota, and Minnesota and the Lions tied for last place in the North. I mean, I have so many words. We really don't have enough time.
Yeah.
Frustrating, disappointing. I really didn't want to watch the game. It was really weird to watch a Lions game with nothing at stake.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
It gave me zero emotion because I was like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Like, okay, a winning record. Hey, yeah, you beat Ben Johnson. Yeah, great. But like to know they weren't going to the playoffs was I don't know. It was tough. Tough pill to swallow, I think, for any Lions fan because of the talent on this team.
Right.
And if you look at just a couple of games, like if they would have played the way they played the first three quarters, I feel like against either Pittsburgh or Minnesota, like I don't think this is a word that has been used a lot. I think the Lions were a little bit overconfident this year. You know, I know they had their injuries and different things like that, and I think players didn't perform the way they did last year, right? There was a lot of guys who had kind of down years. But I just think at times they were just overconfident. They think because what we did last year, we're going to just go in and beat this team. And they didn't do the little things that were needed to win the game against Pittsburgh, to win the game against Minnesota, the Packers game on Thanksgiving. So I think it was a combination of lots of little things that kind of added up to them missing the playoffs. And like I said, with a team with that offense, I think they finished second or third in scoring average for the year. Not to be in the playoffs is just disappointing and disheartening.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, the Vikings are not tied; they're in third place, by the way. So let's,
Who was
let's
last?
make sure.
Oh, Packers were.
No,
oh, my bad. My bad.
No, but
I misspoke.
it is definitely tough to swallow. I guess if you're a Lions fan to see how the season ended and everything else. But no, it's just one of those things for me where when it comes to this offseason, like they need to. I think the way you worded that, Dean, is actually very good. They were overconfident. I think it's a different way of wording it than most people have.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just with the players in the field. I do think that was a little bit of it, but also with the way that the organization's run. I think at some point you got to look in the mirror with what happened this year and realize that you're not only going to be able to win with just your own guys. I think there's no question in my mind they need to bring in an offensive mind, especially with some of the head coaches that have just gotten fired that are out there that do have offensive minds. I think you need to look at some of them to maybe bring in next year to change things around a lot because that was a key problem this year. Like Dan Campbell, I think is a great head coach. I think there was way too much in his plate when he took over the play callings. That's a lot to pay attention to. And when you don't have another set of eyes, I mean, I know that they did have another set of eyes technically still on with John Morton. He was still in the room and like still in the headsets and everything else. But like, obviously he wasn't taking his opinions really that much if he was the one making the calls overall. So they need to get somebody in there that's more serious with that because sometimes I think that Dan does get in his own way with some of the calls that he does make. And when it comes to their organization, I mean, they said they were good when it came to defensive end. They said they were good. I've been saying this all season. They said they were good with offensive line. They said they were good with all these. They're not good. They're not good with that. They have great skill positions on offense, but when it comes to what makes their team go, it's the offensive line, and they don't have that right now. Anytime that Jared Goff had a blitz on him this year, I understand that his numbers technically look good under pressure because he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. But like as far as interceptions go, but incompletions aren't going to do it either. You're not moving the ball when you have to have 3 and outs and punt. And you don't have as many offensive chances because you're constantly coming off the field. So there was a lot of problems in that throughout the end of the season. I agree with you also, Dean, on what you said with the first 3 quarters where they looked against that Bears game. It was just kind of frustrating. It's like maybe they could have been this good all year. And that's where you do have to wonder if the players were a little overconfident when it comes to some of them. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is working on that offensive line, defensive line, like I've been saying all year. And you're probably going to lose Taylor Decker. I'm sure you guys have seen his post-game interview by now. I would imagine he's probably not coming back based off that reaction. And Graham Glasgow is probably always going to be gone. Not that it's a huge loss, but that was just somebody else in their line. I don't think you're just going to snap your fingers and be a top offensive line again. No, so it's going to take a lot of making the right moves with draft picks and maybe trading for once and getting over yourself and getting people in from the outside that'll make your team better because I think this team has the pieces to win. They just have to add proven talent to it.
Yeah, I think the big goal should be to find that proven talent. You know, it's one thing to maybe draft somebody and say, oh, they could develop eventually. This is a team. Again, you fix that offensive line, even if you just get a couple of extra pieces, this might be a completely different season, honestly. And kind of what Dean was saying earlier about it feeling weird. You know, I think back a couple of years ago, remember when Detroit was playing Green Bay and, you know, stopped Green Bay from going to the playoffs with beating them. That felt different. You know, the Lions were going to the playoffs, but, you know, it felt like the momentum was going. The past 2 seasons, it feels like the Detroit Lions, you know, kind of missed their championship window. I don't know if you guys kind of feel like that, but just the way that both seasons kind of ended, one in the playoffs with losing to a team at home, and then this one not even making the playoffs.
See, I don't think that they missed the window. I'm not going to go that far.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of teams you can look back in history that had a season like the Lions just had in the middle of a good run. Now, the Lions haven't won a championship or done anything yet, but I do think that there still is a chance. Again, it's just going back to what I just said. I think you just have to make the right moves this offseason to improve your team. I think there's still the right guys in this room when it comes to like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think I think Jared Goff is somebody that can win a Super Bowl. He's gotten there. He's gotten playoff wins. I don't think if you think I've had plenty of arguments with people about this, but if you think that he's the reason that they were bad this year, I think you're crazy. So I think you got to look at a lot of other problems than that.
Right.
Obviously, you'd like him to be a lot more mobile, but they went 15-2 for a reason. They went whatever they went the year before that to win the NFC North back-to-back years. Like they can win with him as their quarterback. It's just about making the right moves at other spots that aren't the skill positions. I think they thought they could get away with that, and they can't get away with just that. They have to get back to what they did in the past, and maybe that'll. I don't know. There's a lot of people that have been talking about maybe trading somebody like Dave Montgomery. If they're not going to use them, I'd rather have offensive linemen than not using them. So there's just a lot of things they have to look at this offseason they haven't done in the past. I think that'll prove to be a big difference for them going forward. So no, I wouldn't say that they missed their championship window. It's just about if they make the right moves to keep this team going in the right direction. Because if they have another year like they had this year, next year, then yes, they're 100% a team with bad contracts that probably is going to have a very hard time getting back to the top.
Yeah, definitely agree. I don't think the championship window has closed either. The young talent that you have and the guys that you sign long extensions to, obviously Tesla had a great year. Like they're going to be better next year.
Right.
And the only thing the Lions won was a fourth place schedule. And it just came out.
Right.
If you look at some of the opponents on that schedule, you got
Right.
the Jets, you have Arizona, you have Carolina, even though they're Saints.
Yeah.
Like you have a very, well, if you look at some of the teams from this year, right? You have a very not soft schedule, but you have a very promising schedule, right? You had we knew they had a tough schedule this year. So next year is going to be a little bit easier in that respect. But I agree with Andy. You have to kind of plug some different guys in. You have to get healthy. I did heard today that Brian Branch might not be available till Halloween.
Wow.
Because of how long it takes to recover from his torn ACL. So, that's not great. We don't know what's up with Kirby Joseph's knee. So being healthy is obviously a big key to things. I think if they were healthier, they wouldn't have had the stretch they had in the last 3-4 games, right? But I mean, that's all hindsight, okay? But it happened, and every team in the NFL deals with injuries. So, it is what it is. But I think they do still have the opportunity to compete for a Super Bowl in the next 3-4 years.
I mean, how do you guys feel about Calvin Shepard? Is that somebody that you guys think should be coming back? He's not at the top of my list, but for me, it's like I still think they should look at other defensive coordinators. Because if you want to win a Super Bowl, we can talk about them being good or winning whatever, but at the end of the day, the goal coming into this year, believe it or not, was the Super Bowl, right? So like to me,
those were expectations.
Yeah, so if you want to get to that point, I do think you have to look at other guys that have been proven defensive coordinators, because I think that we can complain about their secondary all we want and being injured. Their front seven was healthy. They didn't get any pressure.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is because his schemes were pretty bland towards the end of the year. I think that the last couple of games he did switch things up a little bit. They got a lot more pressure in the final 2 games of the year. Maybe that's something to build off of. Again, he's not the highest, priority on my list of what they need to improve to be good. I do think that he showed the potential the last couple of games to switch things up when somebody got in his ear, probably to do that. But yeah, I still think you should at least explore.
Here's a fun question I'm going to pose to you guys. Someone said this at work. Let's go back to last year. I know they were coming out 15-2, but would you rather had fired Dan Campbell and hired Ben Johnson as your head coach?
No, I don't think so. I think exactly. So here's the other part of my whole thing and what you said. Yes, the Lions won the worst schedule. That means nothing to me. I don't care if they go 13 and whatever next year. If they don't compete for the Super Bowl, I really don't care. But
agree. But they're going to give themselves, hopefully, give themselves a chance.
What I'm saying to you is, I think the Bears are fraudulent. I think next year, I'm all about that. The way that they performed at the end of the year, these last 2 games, I would not be surprised if they're a first round exit.
Hey, they were one play away from winning against the Niners, though.
They were. They played
Niners
great in that game. I think they can put up points too. I don't know if it's just like Dan Campbell being in Ben Johnson's head or what it is that he can't beat him. But you would have thought. The Lions gave a great effort. They wanted to win that game a lot, and they had absolutely nothing to lose. That probably helped them play a lot looser.
A lot freer, yes.
But still, at the end of the day, I still want Dan Campbell as my guy. I just think he needs better coordinators on his staff to be better. At the end of the day, I still think that they have a lot more to prove for Ben Johnson to just be this great head coach. The Lions have had winning seasons for what? 3
4
years.
years in a row.
Yeah, with that franchise, it's still
Yeah,
4 years in a row.
He's
Yeah.
a good head coach. I have no question in my
I
mind.
agree. I was just posing. I don't agree with it. I was just
And
posing.
I just
Yeah.
feel like his personality too just works
Yeah.
better as the head
Yeah,
coach.
yeah.
Versus,
But this is, I mean, we've said it every offseason. It seems to be the biggest one. The last season was the biggest one, but they didn't do anything. This is their last chance to do something, and I do think that he's a big part of that. And obviously, he has a huge voice in the room. So this will probably define this next season. Will probably define how people remember him as a head coach, whether he is here for a long time or they have to get rid of him sooner than they probably anticipated to.
Absolutely. All right. Well, again, pretty sad ending to the Detroit Lions season, and even sadder ending to today's episode because we do have to say goodbye. But we will be back again next week with another episode of the Sports Frenzy podcast. Dean and Andy, thank you both so much for stopping by, and we'll see you guys next week as well.